And every song on this record, like all 7 songs that are coming out, it was a form of therapy for me. There were, multiple burdens and fears and uncertainties and, insecurities that I was dealing with.
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How's it going, Adam?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Whereabouts are you?
In Panama City Beach, Florida.
Okay. Rad.
Yeah, right on the coast.
Nice. So this podcast is about you and your journey in music, and obviously we'll talk about the new EP you have coming out and kind of your origin story into joining the band.
Yeah, right on. Let's go.
Cool. So I guess first off, are you originally from Florida?
I am. Yeah, I grew up in Panama City Beach, right where I'm at now. Moved away for a while. Lived in the Tampa Bay area, which is how I ended up linking up with the guys in Limbs in the first place. But yeah, back home as a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, rad. Yeah, I did see that the band started in Tampa Bay. When I was doing my research, though, you weren't the first singer, though, were you? They had a singer
I
prior.
was not. Yeah,
Okay.
my friend Chris. Yeah, my friend Chris was the original vocalist,
Okay.
and he's part of the reason I'm in the band now.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that point. I love that.
Yeah,
So first off,
yeah.
what was it like growing up in Panama City?
Oh, it was a blast, man. Growing up, being close to the water, I got into surfing and fishing and all things water related at an early age. So it was really nice to have that in my backyard. And yeah, I've moved all over the place in the last, 7 or 8 years, and even being on the road, seeing a bunch of different parts of the country. And this always wins for me. This always ends up being home. So yeah, it was great to, be able to move home and be back to my roots.
Sure. Well, how did you get into music? Was that big there in your town where you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, there still is a killer local scene here. Not really what it once was, but it's on the up. It's on the come
Mhm.
up. Yeah, the shows here growing up were just wild because, a lot of other big Florida bands like A Day to Remember and
Mhm.
Under Oath would always come through Panama City in their early years as a band. So, getting to see like Under Oath, and I don't know if you remember an old band called Calico System from back
Oh
in the
yeah.
day.
Sure.
Yeah, still a huge fan of that band. But those bands would come through town, and we would have essentially like 5 or 6 locals, and then sometimes the locals would be headlining over those guys. So it was wild to see that in retrospect. But
Wow. Oh, just because
yeah,
their fan base is bigger in Panama City than whoever else is coming through.
yeah, and I remember like one of the biggest shows that I've probably ever been to, even to this day, was Under Oath, Calico System, Evergreen Terrace, and A
Oh, I
Day to
remember.
Remember. Yeah,
Wow.
all four of those bands on the same bill at like a little hole in the wall joint in Panama City. I was probably like 14, so like getting to experience shows like that at a young age definitely like lit the fire underneath me to like start playing music for sure.
Rad. I forgot about Evergreen Terrace. Are they still a
Yeah.
band? I haven't heard that name in such a long time.
I think the last time I saw them was one of the first handfuls of shows I played with Limbs. We played a music fest in Savannah, Georgia called Aura Fest,
Okay.
and I think Evergreen Terrace was like one of the last acts on that fest. Yeah, I think they were
That's
like second to
rad.
last. That was the last
Wow.
time I saw them. I don't know if they're still a band, but
Yeah.
I mean,
I just curious. I haven't heard that name in a long time. That's awesome.
yeah, it shows my age right there. Yeah.
And mine. Killer. So I mean, a lot of shows were coming through there, but how did you get into music? Were you in piano lessons or anything like that, guitar lessons as a young kid?
No, not really. I've definitely come from a musical family, though. My mom was a gospel singer.
Okay.
So I got it on that side of the family. But my dad and grandfather were both jazz drummers. So drums was
Wow.
actually my first love. Yeah. So yeah, I played drums for the longest time. And then by the time I was like 13, 14, like I said, going to shows and like seeing all these bands. And I'd always sung a little bit, with my mom at church or whatever. But seeing those guys like fronting like hardcore bands and things like that really kind of piqued my interest, and I was like, I want to do that. And
Hmm.
then it kind of snowballed from there, and I just kind of
Okay.
went headfirst into it. Yeah, yeah.
But you didn't continue on drums. I would think that, I don't
I,
know. I guess maybe
I
like
mean,
seeing
yeah,
those hardcore bands and like how fast they play, maybe that would be an inspiration as well. But if I mean,
It
obviously
was,
singing
yeah.
is your thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I was just drawn to like the energy that a frontman brings to a band. There's something about it that intrigued me to a point where like I still played drums and I play
Mhm.
guitar as well, but those kind of hit the back burner and I really focused on like wanting to sing. I really can't put a pin in it of what exactly it was, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I just
Okay.
tunnel vision with that from a young age. Yeah.
Mhm. And with that, like, did you start a band? Like, were you trying to start a band, a hardcore band or anything like that? And once you had, kind
Yeah.
of seen that all happen?
Yeah, the freshman year of high school, me and a couple of buddies, just posted up in his parents' garage with a friend of mine playing drums and another friend playing guitar. And I kind of just had my first take at trying to be a vocalist. And at this time, I was listening to, Under Oath and Poison the Well
Mhm.
and Bayside, like a lot of the great post-hardcore bands from like the early 2000s, and Thursday as well being a huge influence. I was basically just trying to mimic what I heard. And I feel
Okay.
like a lot of vocalists do that, in their start. They try to sound like whoever their influences are.
Oh,
And
sure.
they,
Yeah.
well, because I'm trying to figure out how to use my voice, and I obviously at that point in time had no idea what I was doing. So I was basically probably just yelling into the mic the whole time.
Right.
So, but I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned those bands because I mean, like Jeff Rickley can sing and Anthony from Bayside, like those guys are great vocalists and they can scream. So it wasn't like you were just going for like the super hardcore like screaming
Right.
voice.
Yeah, I mean, because don't get me wrong, there were plenty of bands that I was into at the time. I mean, bands like 18 Visions, where they had a little bit of clean vocals back in the day.
Mhm.
But I mean, there were bands that I really loved, like Throwdown and
Oh yeah,
Terror, that were
yeah,
just straight
sure.
up just like
Like
beatdown
hardcore.
bands. Yeah,
Right, right.
exactly. Yeah, like true hardcore to the genre. Yeah.
That's
So I
cool.
mean, but that's the music that I was drawn to, though. I mean, that era. I always call it like the golden era of post-hardcore because you had Thursday's Full Collapse. You
Oh
had
yeah. Can you believe that
what was
record's
that Evergreen?
21 years old now? Like
Dude,
I saw that and
yeah.
I screenshotted it, sent to my friend. I'm like, "You ready to feel old?" Like this record's 21 years old.
Yeah, man. I actually thought about that the other day when we were still like getting settled in our new house here, unloading all my vinyl collection. And I've got a copy of Full Collapse on vinyl. And I
So do
saw it
I. I
and it's
love
like
it.
2001. I was like, oh man.
Dude, I know.
Yeah. So I
It's
feel that.
crazy
I
to
feel
see some of those things.
that.
Wow. So freshman year you started a band or did you guys ever get out of the garage or did it
That
stay
one,
there?
yeah, that one did not. It was just kind of for fun. Closer to the end of 10th grade was when I played my first show. Funny enough, had gotten into it was a band called Answer Me This, just like a high school band that started playing shows, and I replaced the vocalist.
Okay.
That seems to be yeah, it seems to have been a reoccurring theme in my upbringing in bands. But yeah, they had a singer. I guess it didn't work out with him for whatever reason, and they had already had material. So I kind of just jumped into singing somebody else's material,
Mhm.
which I think in the learning stages of a vocalist, like for myself personally, I feel like that was a good thing because like my writing capability maybe wasn't there yet, or I still was kind of figuring out how to sing really in
Mhm.
general. But it was cool to have that foundation to just be like, okay, well, they've already got songs. I'll just learn these songs and we'll take it from there. But that ended up being a band for a couple years, and then people moved away, went to college, this, that, and the third. And yeah, I played in some other local bands over the years, and then I moved away from Panama City in 2014 for another band that had just lost a vocalist.
Okay.
So yeah, man. Like
Were
I
they
said,
like a
it's like this.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
cut you off.
you're fine. No, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, that band that you, because it sounds like the first band that you replaced the vocalist was just like a local band in town or like a high school
Mhm.
band, and then
Yeah.
you replace this other singer. You move out of Panama City to a different town to replace the singer. Was
Yeah.
that band pretty established at the time, like, or were they kind of just another local band or unsigned band?
Well, I had moved to Atlanta. It was a band called Native Sons. They had already had a couple of different singers at the time. I think they were on Sumerian for a short period.
Mhm.
So I mean, they were mildly established. I know they kind of made a name for themselves in the Atlanta scene. But it was something different for me. It was like a softer side of post-hardcore, a little bit more singing oriented. So that kind of drew me to it. And my friend Jason, who has been in other bands in the scene, he was in Slaves for a while as the bass player.
Really?
Yeah, he had reached
Wow.
out to me because he and I have been. He's from the Panhandle of Florida originally as well,
Okay.
but he had reached out to me and he's like, "Hey man, we lost our singer. You should really come up to Atlanta for the weekend and jam with us."
Hmm.
And then one thing led to another, and then I spent the next like 4 years in Atlanta with that band,
Okay.
which was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean it was a good time. But yeah, at the end of that, all some things kind of went down, and we were basically at each other's throats by the end of it about
Hmm.
just silly stuff. That's what happens though when you have like 5 dudes all living in a house together,
Right.
also all being in a band, and like who paid the power bill? What yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh, so you're roommates and bandmates. Yeah, that get a little
yeah,
dicey, especially if you're on the road
yeah, it got a
always
little
together. Like
dicey.
you can never get away.
Yeah,
Like you're almost like never separated from these people.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah. It never really had like that separation between like normal life and band life.
Yeah,
So it
or
was
getting home from tour
like
and kind of having time to like decompress. It's like we're all home from tour in the same house.
that too. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it was fun for a while, and then things kind of just went south quick. We all kind of grew apart, and which was fine because that's what led me to move to the Tampa Bay area.
Hmm.
Um, Jordan, the guitar player in Limbs, he and I have also been friends for quite a long time because he's from the area of Florida that I grew up in here. And it was another one of those situations where I got down to Tampa Bay, St. Pete, had already hung out with the guys a bunch, knew them pretty well, and a tour came around in like fall, early winter of 2018, and my friend Chris, the previous vocalist for Limbs, was running a coffee shop at the time, and I went and saw him one day and had coffee with him, and he's like, "Hey man, I want to ask you something." I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he proceeds to ask me to fill in for him on a tour. And I was like, what? Because at this
Yeah.
point yeah, it was a big like what moment because I hadn't played heavy music in years.
Hmm.
The Atlanta band was like pretty much indie, very minimal screaming. So in my head, I was like, can I even still do this? Like, do I have that in me still? But yeah, he asked me to fill in. I reluctantly agreed. And then like 10 seconds after he asked me that, he's like, cool, cool. So since you're all right with filling in, how would you feel about just taking over full time? Yeah, oh yeah, just hit me with it. I was like,
That's so
oh
funny.
wow. Yeah, it was definitely a surprising moment to say the least. And I told him I'd think about it.
Hmm.
So we went out on that tour. It was a tour with Currents and another band from the New England area called Sentinels. I love those guys. But yeah, went out with them for a couple of weeks. It was a lot of fun. I kind of just stepped right back into the role of being a lead singer, and things went relatively smooth. And we came home from that. UNFD, our label, did send out tryouts for a few other people that were interested,
Hmm.
understandably so, because
Sure.
I didn't want to feel like I was getting into it just because I'm friends with the guys.
Right. Right. You want to make sure
Yeah,
you're the right fit. Or yeah, I mean that
exactly.
makes sense. Well,
Or
I'm
vice
curious.
versa. Yeah,
Right. Real quick though, I have
yeah,
a couple questions.
yeah.
So they were already signed because they were first signed with Fearless, right? Originally, the label. I think they I want
No,
to say
Equal
they.
Vision.
Oh,
They were
Equal
with
Vision.
Equal Vision
Sorry. Yeah,
first.
Equal
Yeah.
Vision. So they're on Equal Vision and then they went to UNFD and
Yes.
so that already had all happened and then they're re-signed. So you weren't in that process, that piece.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it.
So yeah.
Okay.
So like our EP Sleep was released through Equal Vision,
Yeah, Equal
and
Vision. That's
then
what it was. Sorry.
yeah. No, you're
I
good.
always get mixed up.
And then Father Son, the full length from 2018, was with UNFD. That was their debut release on UNFD.
And
And
you
then
were
I
on
came
that.
into the band
Were
after
you?
that.
Oh, you joined after that
Not
record
on
had
that
out.
record.
Oh,
Yeah, not on
okay.
that record. Nope. That's all
Interesting.
Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Was that difficult?
Hmm.
I mean, going now you're in a band that well, first off, the singer is coming to you and being like, yo, like, can you fill in? And I know that
Yeah.
record is like really heavy, right? I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
heavy in the sense, but like it's got a lot of root meaning in it. right? Isn't it a
Yeah, there's a
concept
lot to
record
it.
about him
It is a
and
concept, yeah.
about him leaving like the church and all this in this stuff? And
Yeah, I mean it's a big narrative. I mean, it's not really like firsthand accounts of anything, but it's just
oh,
it's a
okay.
big story. Yeah, it's like a mini novel about, a kid growing up in a religious household and institution and kind of losing his religion along the way and like finding himself. So it's like this, I mean, even before I was in the band, I was a big fan of that record because like I grew up in a religious household and kind
Hmm.
of had the same path where I fell out of things. So like it hit with me and I was like, dude, this
Okay.
record's sick. Yeah, but
Okay.
it was definitely interesting stepping into that role and having to sing those songs because in a way I kind of felt like they were still my own, even though I didn't write them.
Okay, that's cool to know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if
yeah.
that was like if it came directly from him and it's like you now you got to go up and not only fill a role of a singer who's been in
Mhm.
probably has some a fan base of some sort and then not only sing but sing this record that I didn't know was like a direct like autobiography of his life or something like a biopic.
That would have, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not necessarily a firsthand account of things, but it's
Mhm.
more of just like yeah, it's storytelling at its finest, but it's I mean
Right.
the idea at its root is I guess something that he went through as a kid, but
But
yeah,
relatable to
it wasn't.
you.
Yeah, it's totally relatable. So, which I think is what made it a bit easier for me to step into it and singing those songs live. It felt less weird. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. And were
Yeah.
you getting any flat like were people showing up at the show like being like, "Oh, like what happened to blah, Chris?" Or was that a thing?
It wasn't as prevalent as I thought it would be because when we got home from that tour with Currents and Sentinels, there had been one or two people a night that had been like, "Oh, hey, where's Chris?" And at the time, obviously, I was just like, "Oh, I'm a buddy. I'm just filling in. He'll
Mm.
be back soon," kind of thing. Um, but we went on tour in 2019, in the spring of 2019, with The Plot and You and Dayseeker and like Moth to Flames, which was sick. And I did have a handful of nights where people were like, "Hey, you're not Chris," and I'm like, "I
Uh,
know, sorry." But it wasn't like in a
yeah.
malicious kind of sense. It was just people were surprised. I mean, because we had announced it and everything. We had made a formal announcement and the whole online spiel about me joining the band. But
Right.
a lot of people, I guess, didn't know.
Missed that.
Um, yeah, so
Of
it
course.
wasn't really like a negative thing. But again, all that being said, when people would come up to me and ask what happened to Chris, they would follow that up with, "Well, by the way, dude, it's not that big a deal because you're fucking great." Like
Oh,
people
that's
were
good. Yeah,
like,
like
yeah, like
supportive of you.
yes, yeah. So that made things a lot easier for sure. Like to have that positive reinforcement after the fact.
And you had the cosign from him. He asked you to be in the band, right? I mean, it wasn't like
Right.
you were just taking his job. It was like he's offering you
Exactly.
his job. So
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm sure
because
if there was a mention of it, I bet that was a story that probably followed, right? I mean, that wasn't just like, oh, and then Austin comes in the band and takes us. It was probably like, and then they had this kind of mutual thing. Like, I mean, that's a cool story. I don't know if that's ever been told, but like, you know,
yeah,
I,
I'm very grateful for it and very fortunate because, like, before he had asked me to fill in and, kind of join up with the rest of the guys, that was a point in time for me musically where I didn't know if I'd ever be in a band again.
mhm.
It had been a few years since I had done anything. And, as artists, we were always kind of tinkering with song ideas and, writing stuff in our basement and, just doing stuff on our own just to kind of stay limber, so to speak, with our craft. But
Mhm.
I hadn't played a show, I hadn't recorded anything. I mean, I hadn't done anything relative to heavy music in quite some time. So I'm super thankful in that regard to have that opportunity that he kind of just laid out in front of me one day while having
Mhm.
coffee together.
Yeah,
Because I don't know if I'd be in a band right now had that not happened. So
that's so cool though.
yeah,
I mean, and
yeah.
then so you said you joined the band what 2019? Is that when
Officially, yeah,
officially?
spring of 2019 officially.
And
Yeah.
then you obviously the world shuts down in 2020 and then are you like in like okay I just joined this band now we're kind of all sitting around figuring out what's going on like was that a weird time aside from being weird for everybody like
Well,
what were you
yeah, yeah.
feeling like as far as like joining this band went.
Well, when we got home from the Plot and You tour in spring of 2019, we sat down with Tim from Under Oath, who has worked with us in the past on material. And we cranked out like two, I call them feeler songs because it was really like a transitional period still for me as the vocalist. We put out a song called Abandoned and another one called Stare, which for me, it was like testing the waters. It was us all together writing collectively, as opposed to in the past where I think Chris was probably the primary songwriter and everybody else kind of just played their role, so to speak.
And this is your
But it
first
was yeah,
debut on a record, right? For the band.
Essentially, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we all got to sit down collectively and write together. I know, sorry, I have a 20-pound cat that is just like constantly
It's all good.
up on my stuff here.
No need to no need to apologize.
It's every time I sit down at the desk, that's what happens. But
if the cat wants to jump up, it's all good.
We'll let you up in a minute, but okay, I'll just real quick.
I love Zoom. Oh my goodness, that is a big kitty.
This is Walter. Say hey, buddy. You know,
hi, Walter.
Now? Yeah,
I love his bow tie.
Yeah, he's a fancy boy. He's mad because he didn't get second breakfast.
Oh,
okay. They're spoiled now because they're only on wet food nowadays, and yeah, their energy is off the charts. But anyways, yeah, we did those two songs, and then towards the end of 2019, we started writing more material for our next release, which is our 3-song EP, Only the Lonely Know. That was a big shift in the band, not only sonically, but just our overall attitude towards, you know, where we wanted to take things. And I feel like those 3 songs that we put out, because those came out in 2020 during the pandemic, but we had them kind of ready to go beforehand. But those 3 songs were a huge like sonic shift in the direction we wanted to take the band, because it's definitely less post-hardcore, more kind of ambient metalcore to a degree, which was like I said, a shift from Father Son, which is just like a straight up post-hardcore record.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you to blame on that? I mean, not to blame in the sense of like, were you getting like fans of the band who like coming at you like, oh, and then the sound change, like did you get any of that?
I mean, a little bit here and there, which is understandable because we did have member changes, not only myself, but we, got Joey and Chris, our drummer and bass player. They were new to the game.
Sure. And, you only have the two guitarists, right? Were the 2 original people?
Yeah, Jordan and Tyler.
Okay.
Yeah. And, that's to be expected, I guess, sometimes with bands, when you've got member changes and we all start writing collectively as opposed to one person doing it all. But I also felt like it was a natural progression. They had wanted to do certain things musically all this time and sort of couldn't, because they kind of weren't in the driver's seat with writing. But I attest a lot of our change in dynamic and sound to Tyler. We call him Riff Lord. So he'll just start cranking out riffs and, skeletons of songs, and him and Jordan kind of ping pong off each other. And we've got a really good thing in place now. We've got a very cohesive environment for us to all work together on music. And I think not only that EP shows it, but the most recent release here, coming out in June with Coma Year, I think it really shows what we've been able to do together collectively in, just like a worry-free environment, like doing what we want to do sonically and not having to worry about it.
And this record is really true to you. I mean, especially it's like a deep-rooted record. Tell me about that and being like so vulnerable. And was that a difficult process to even open up?
I mean, yes and no, because I knew from the get-go with these songs, like even during our recording sessions, I knew with these songs that I was dealing with a lot personally. There were a lot of, skeletons in the closet, so to speak, that I was sort of ignoring instead of just dealing with. And every song on this record, like all 7 songs that are coming out, it was a form of therapy for me. There were, multiple burdens and fears and uncertainties and, insecurities that I was dealing with. And I felt like the only way to kind of get those things off my chest and to purge that from my consciousness was to, put them in tangible form, like to get them out there, to kind of just be an open book for anybody that listens to the band. And I can honestly say I feel a lot better. I'm in a much better mental state now that this record is complete, and that I'm able to look back and see what we've done together, and realize like that's where I was. I was in a dark place,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where I am now. And that was huge for me. And I hope people resonate with that as well. I hope people listen to it and understand the brevity of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, from what I was just reading about the record, it has a lot to do with loss. I mean, you said you lost your father in 2015, and
I did. Yeah.
then you have a pandemic that just throws that on top
Yeah.
of everything. And like, was it just, did it all kind of come back to you then, or was it just stuff that eventually, you just knew that you needed to get off your chest? Like, tell me about like when it kind of came to the point where you're like, I should just write all this out. Like, I need to write it
Yeah.
and get it off my chest.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, there was definitely a moment when we got off tour in January of 2020. We got home like the first week of February,
Oh
and
man.
that was, yeah, dude. Yeah, finished this awesome tour with the guys in Beartooth, Emotionless and White, Stick to Your Guns,
Oh
and
wow.
which was completely bonkers aside from
What
itself.
an
Yeah,
amazing tour.
dude, absolutely wild. Again, can't thank those guys enough for having us. But yeah, we got home from this crazy tour, and I can't speak for everybody, but I know Tyler and myself were both struggling a lot mentally at the time. Jordan was going through some things, and I remember sitting on my couch. This was before we had moved to another state because we have a tendency to do that, my wife and I. Um, but I was sitting on the couch, fresh off tour, sitting there watching the news, under like just hearing all of this about like the whole country's about to shut down. Everything's going dark. Like the
Mhm.
industry's going dark. Like everything is just crashing and burning around me. And it really, like I said, I'm better for it now because I went through it, but like it really drummed up all those old feelings of the year after losing my father. And that's what the title of the record, Coma Year, refers to, not only the pandemic, but it refers to 2015 to 2016 after
Oh,
losing him. Yeah, so it's got a bit of a double meaning to
I
it.
mean, that all makes complete sense though.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I remember just sitting there reading the news and listening to everything online and just being like, wow, I don't know what I'm gonna do, just being completely blank to it all. Because it did drum up a lot of those old feelings of loss and uncertainty from losing my dad. Yeah.
Sure. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, man. Well, I'm so sorry to hear about that. That's so
Thank you,
terrible.
man.
Yeah, and but to be able to, I'm glad that you're able to kind of, therapeutically get it out that way, and then share that with other people that are, there's got to be, so many people that are going through the same thing. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah,
they can
exactly.
take that in and use that. Like, I think that's so cool, and that's one of the coolest things about music, obviously, is being able to, take
The
something from what
universal
you do.
healer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Universal healing. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for. And
Yeah.
so,
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, so when does the record, like, when do you guys start writing the record? Was it early 2020, or did it take a while to finally, muster up the courage and be in the right state of mind to write it all out?
Yeah. So the whole process kind of started mid 2020. We had a lot of ideas kind of being thrown back and forth, like song wise. Half songs here, certain structures of other stuff here. Um, we're throwing all these ideas back and forth while also in the process of releasing our 3-song EP, Only the Lonely Know.
Hmm.
So that came out in August of 2020, I believe, was the first time August is when we dropped the first song off of it. And the whole EP was done by October. And from October 2020 on to this past year, that's when we really started honing in on our next release, what we really wanted to do. Because, like I said, we had a handful of demos. We didn't really know which ones to pick and choose. Thankfully, UNFD helped us out with that. We just like sent them a giant basket of music, and they're like, "Here, help."
Okay.
So yeah, so they thankfully provided a guiding hand in which ones they thought would work the best together. But as far as like lyrical content and subject matter, it's a lot of the things in these songs. It's something that I struggle with on a daily basis. So I knew early on that I wanted to get these things off my chest. I needed that because I'm super stubborn. Like my wife tells me all the time, like maybe you should try, talking to somebody. Maybe you should try some therapy. And like I'm all for it. I'm not against it. I'm just incredibly stubborn. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do that later.
I'll
Or,
get to it.
I'll try. I'll get to it eventually.
Sure.
But yeah, sitting down and writing these songs, like I said, were that therapy for me. I mean, I should probably still talk to somebody, but yeah, I knew, like I said, I knew early on that that's what I wanted to focus on. Everything that I was dealing with, all of my loss, all of my struggles, all of my grief. I wanted to get that out there and just put it out front because, like you said, everybody goes through these types of things, and I feel like it's really important to be open and upfront about it because I'm not the only one. And if somebody else listens to this record and makes that realization that like, oh shit, he's going through it too, but look at him now, he made it out clean on the other side. Maybe that would give them the motivation to keep on trucking, so to speak.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah.
When you put out the first songs from from the EP coming out, was it like, were you concerned at all, or you like, how are people going to react to this, or was that even a thought?
I mean, there's always that thought in the back of my mind of like when we release music, like, oh, are people gonna like this? What are people gonna think?
Sure.
But I feel like that was overshadowed by my excitement because this is, in my opinion, like the best material that we've ever, released, both sonically and lyrically. I feel like we all just put 110% into everything with this. I know I did for sure, as well as the rest of the guys. But yeah, I feel like that little bit of doubt was overshadowed by everybody being so stoked to drop this because at the end of the day, if you're not a fan of your own music, how can you expect somebody else to enjoy it,
Right.
So
I love that.
Yeah, so we were super excited for it. And with Spirit Breaker, the first song that we released about a month and a half ago, that one was super heavy on the subject matter as well. It follows the dialogue of a friend and I's last conversation before he passed away from a drug overdose.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. And this is one of those things, man. These are things that I had been struggling with for so long because he passed away during the pandemic. And yeah, man, it was tough to get that one out. So again, I wasn't necessarily worried if people would like it or not. It was more of a relief to kind of set that one out into the wild because of the heaviness of the subject matter, and because the whole song follows the last phone conversation that he and I had. So it kind of jumps back and forth. Yeah. It jumps back and forth between, him being calm and collected and then kind of snapping and becoming erratic like some people do when they have, substance abuse issues. And like the latter half of the song is me trying to like unscramble my brain from all of this, trying to, come to terms with what's going on. So it was definitely a big relief to get that one out for me. That one was really tough. That one and Coma Year were probably the most difficult to record. Even though I wrote the lyrics and everything for him and I knew what I was getting myself into with like writing songs like this, those were the most difficult to like get down in a recording environment. Not so much like from a physical standpoint with singing and everything, but just the emotion that comes with it, having to like check myself in the vocal booth, like, no, dude, don't cry. You got to sing right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Was it something too where you were like overcritical of the song, or you wanted to make sure like this, I have to sing this perfect? Like, I don't know. Were you even more, like, I don't know, I guess like over cautious of like how it would come out, or didn't even think about it?
At first, maybe a little bit, but I remember because that one was done during our first recording session with our buddy Chris Wiseman, who's in Currents and Shadow of Intent. He did all the engineering on this record, but it was during our first session with him at his studio. And I remember feeling like that for the first couple of takes. And then I kind of just snapped out of it, and not for any specific reason, but I kind of just got into the zone, and just kind of went headfirst into it and didn't try to worry too much about like, because if something was wrong or it's like something went like south as far as like a vocal take or something like that, if something sounded wonky, like Chris would be like, yeah, hey dude, let's do that one again. That was not quite there. Yeah,
Okay, so he's
so
got, yeah, he's got your back
he's
when it
got
comes
my
to that.
back.
So sure,
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I kind of just kind of zoned out and kind of immersed myself into those feelings, and I feel like that's what guided me to, you know, do my best in those in that regard.
Have you had a chance? I know you're doing a tour coming up in a little less than a month. Have you
Mhm.
had a chance to play any of these songs live yet? And do you think that'll, I mean, that'll probably spark some emotions as well?
Yeah, we haven't. Well, no, that's not true. We played Spirit Breaker live on this last tour back in February. But the rest of the songs have yet to be played. There were definitely a few nights on tour. I remember one night specifically we're at Marquee Theater in Denver,
Mhm.
and there's a part in the song that's like a bridge before the breakdown, and like the lyrics are, "This is me reaching out, but it's too late. I close my eyes and I see your face again."
Oh
And
man.
again, even though it's words that I've written and that I've come to terms with having in a song, like that part of the song comes up, and like I'll make eye contact with somebody in the crowd that's just like fully into what we're doing, and you can't help but choke up a little bit, man. Like I had to like definitely take a breath and like stop myself. I'm like, hey dude, snap out of it, you got a
Yeah.
breakdown coming up. Like, but it, yeah, man, it got easier for sure, you know, just in playing that song every night, but that looming feeling kind of never goes away, you know.
Sure.
But again, I feel like it's a form of healing in its own right to, you know, not necessarily become callous to that emotion, but to understand how to cope with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because
playing it over and over definitely helps.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe the repetition will help a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, and like I said, obviously you have this big tour coming up, and more heavy songs or heavy meaning behind these songs that you're gonna have
Yeah.
to bring to
Oh,
the
I'll
stage
probably
every
cry
night.
on stage at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was
No
gonna say
shame.
so would I, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, well that's rad. So you're playing starting the 3rd of next month.
Yeah, June 3rd out with the boys in Greyhaven and the Callis Cowboys. It's gonna be fun, man. We're getting super hyped up. We're gonna be headed up to Connecticut where our rehearsal space is in the next couple of weeks, and we're all getting that itch, man. I'm getting
That's
super
awesome.
excited to get out on the road.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you
absolutely.
guys rehearse in Connecticut?
We do. Yeah, we've got a bit of a strange dynamic in the band because I'm in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, my guitar player, lives in Manhattan. Tyler is in Nashville, our other guitar player, and Joey, our drummer, and Chris, our bass player, are both in Connecticut.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
You
yeah,
guys are all over the place. At least you're
um,
all on the East
all,
Coast ish.
yeah, ish, yeah. So yeah, on at least like this chunk of the
Yeah.
country, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We make it work though, and you know, it somehow goes off without a hitch every time. You know, knock on desk, but it is kind
Knock
of
on
fun though.
desk.
Yeah, it is fun though. We get super excited. We get super hyped up because we don't see each other for a couple of months at a time. They're like, hell yeah, let's go. We're gonna be back with the boys, and then we start rehearsing, and then you know, it's like we never left. You know,
Mhm.
we just fall right back into it, and it's a really good feeling to have. You know,
So cool. So cool. Well, I appreciate
yeah.
your time today, Austin. This has been awesome. I love the songs I've heard off the record thus far. And thank you for talking to me about like such deep, deep things that
Yeah,
your these records all have to offer. I mean, it's from pre you being in the band. I mean, you just continued the, the super, yeah, like vulnerable lyrics and subject matter. I think that's awesome.
well, I appreciate that, man. I feel like it's super important these days because there's definitely been times in the past with other bands where I've like written something that I thought just sounded good, didn't really necessarily mean anything to me. I was like, oh, I'll just say this or I'll just sing this way because I think it's just cool, you
Hmm.
know. But with like I said, with this record, I really just honed in. I was like, this is what I need to do. I don't care if it's like overly vulnerable or if it makes me or anybody else uncomfortable. Like this needs to just come out, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the kind words on that.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate you doing this. I have one more quick question. I want to know if you
Yeah.
have any advice for aspiring artists.
Don't give up.
I
Yeah.
love it.
No matter what life throws at you, don't give up. Cause I mean, there have been plenty of times when I definitely felt like just walking away from music. And had I done that, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So, and you know, opportunities happen at the strangest of times, like when you're having coffee with a friend and he asks you to take over his band. So, yeah, man. And, you know, people have asked me that before at shows and stuff too, as far as like, you know, doing vocals and like honing in on your craft. And like I always tell them the same thing, like, well, I sucked for a really long time. And eventually you'll figure it out. Just, you know, just stick with it. And don't be afraid to ask other people in bands questions. Like, you know, pick people's brains. Like I've learned so much from other people over the years just by, you know, sitting down and having a beer or just hanging out and be like, hey man, this part of the song when you sing like this, you know, what does that feel like? And because I've never had vocal lessons or anything, but I know a lot of people have, and that definitely helps a lot of people. But yeah, don't give up. Ask questions, hang out with your friends, pick their brains if, you know, if they're also a musician, and, you know, learn from each other.